What's up, everyone? Welcome to Say What I Mean. Thank you for listening, and we got a big show for y'all. First of all, I want to start off today's show by saying a big RIP to Elijah Cummings. He died last week, and he was only 68. So it is really sad, and thoughts and condolences go out to the people that love him, his family, and friends. So that's how I want to start it off. But on today's show, we got a big show lined up for you, and it is the weekend/week begin show. So I'm going to be covering some of the biggest stories and underreported stories of last week, along with telling y'all what to watch for in the upcoming week. Now, let's begin. First thing I want to do is cover the Democratic debate last week. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank the candidates from 12 to 1, who I thought had the worst night and who I thought had the best night. Now, when it comes to this, I don't necessarily agree with all their stands or their opinions, but the way I did my rankings is this: who got the most attention, where they at in the polls, and did they do what they need to do for their current circumstance. So that's how I looked at it. I didn't look at it like, okay, I agree with this person, or they had the right policies positions. Some of that is in there too. And, coming from my perspective, I rank certain individuals higher than others when it comes to that one, but it's not solely about that. So we're going to go over that. We're going to go over this Tulsi Gabbard agent thing that Hillary threw out there. And we're going to go over what police reform should look like or could look like. So we definitely got a big show for you. Now, let's start off with the debates. And first thing I noticed about the debates is how crappy CNN is. And I say this every debate because it's true. They don't care about policy issues. The framing is all off. They frame things from a right-wing perspective. They frame things from establishment perspective. So I'm not happy with CNN, but I didn't expect to be. They left out so many topics that they should have talked about. Again, police reform, not mentioned. And especially when you have a candidate like Mayor Pete in the race that have a ton of problems when it comes to that issue. Now, you ask Elizabeth Warren about how she's going to pay for Medicare for all every single debate, right? But when it comes to something like police reform and what do you plan to do about the unarmed killing of black people and police discrimination, no questions for Mayor Pete. They had questions for him in one debate, and that was about it. Maybe the second debate too, but it was real brief, and they let him skate by. But when it comes to somebody like Elizabeth Warren with the Medicare for all, how you gonna pay for it, they ask her that every debate. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to bias. Very little foreign policy talk besides the Syria situation, which the Syria situation and the Kurds should be talked about, but so much more when it comes to foreign policy. Like, for example, what are we doing with African? Should we be in the Middle East at all? Why are we still in Afghanistan? How do you plan to pull out? If you plan to pull out your first year, what do an orderly withdrawal look like? Some of these questions is the type of questions that need to be asked that wasn't. Like I said, very little questions when it came to race, and then the post-debate is the worst part of it, in my opinion. Post-debate, you could tell who the panel thought won or who their favorites are. Van Jones get on my nerves. He really do. Like, I don't have nothing personally against the brother, but I don't know, man. I don't want to call him names, but he always overly happy after the debate. He just overdo it, just very, he overdo it. I don't know if he tried to make the white people around him comfortable, but that's what it comes off to. come off as, excuse me, in my opinion, and come off as him trying to make white people comfortable, which I really don't like, you know. And he needs to change that quickly, but probably won't, because since he's been acting like that, he's been getting more and more plates. If you don't understand what that means, that basically slang for saying that he getting more and more money. He getting his fame up. His face is all over CNN, so he probably going to continue on the track he's continuing on, even though it's a bad look. It really is a bad look. Now, to the rankings. Number 12, Tom Steyer. Why is he number 12? I don't think any of his specific answers was necessarily bad, but he just didn't do anything to improve his position. First of all, most people don't know who the hell he is. Like, yo, straight up, who the fuck's Tom Steyer? This is his first debate. He's a billionaire. Y'all might have seen some of his commercials during the 2018 election where he kept having all these impeachment. Well, he had all these impeachment commercials about how we need to impeach Trump, which is cool. But I think Sam Cedar and the Majority Report make this point all the time, that money would be better off spent with specific issues. Because he's not, let's face it, he's not going to be president. So he's spending a lot of money. He bought a ton of ads in Iowa. He paid for email listings. So he basically bought his way into the ballot. Like, because nobody's asking him to run for president. Nobody know who the hell he is. He's a hedge fund manager, or he was. That's how he got his money. And again, nobody know who he is. Nobody was asking him to run. He had no grassroots momentum. And during the debate, he did nothing to basically both are refusing to run for Senate, which I don't understand why, because the Senate is so important. You know, because the Republicans control the Senate and the executive branch, they have been able to get so many right-wing extremist judges in the courts. And people don't think about that enough. Not just the Supreme Court. You got the two lower courts too. And they pack in the courts with so many right-wing extremists. And if we want to get some of these policies implemented, a lot of them are going to get challenged. And they go to some of these conservative judges, it's not going to look good. It's not going to look good. So the Democrats definitely need to take control of the Senate. And I understand people's frustrations with Democrats, but this is why I'm never on that thing where, don't vote. Because there's so many little stuff that it affects. So Beto should have been dropped out. He have no momentum currently. Now, his big thing been over the last month or so, ever since the El Paso shooting, or last couple months, been about gun control, which I agree with. It's long overdue. We should have been had gun control. But, because of the NRA, cowardly politicians, we don't even do common sense gun control. Something as simple as just background checks. We've been unable to pass, so that's very disappointing. However, Beto been on something like, okay, we going to take away all automatic weapons, AK-47s and all that, which I think is an interesting debate to have. Not necessarily against it, but I want to know, okay, if you're going to do that, how are you planning to do that? And that was actually a good question by CNN, one of the few, when they directly asked Beto that question. And he had no answer. He was just rambling. He didn't directly address the question. And it was just a terrible answer. He had no direct answer how to do that. Him and Mayor Fuckboy Pete been going back and forth for a few weeks about this. And I really dislike Mayor Pete Buttigieg, whatever the fuck his name is. But I really dislike him, for several different reasons. I'm going to get to that in a second. But they've been going back and forth with that. And basically, Beto have no plan for it. No plan for the mandatory buyback program. If this is your signature issue that you are running on, you need to have those answers. and he just didn't. And besides that, he had no other moments in the debate. He tried to go to Elizabeth Warren with something. It failed. It didn't work. It was terrible. Get out of here. Okay, number 10 for me, Kamala Harris. Wow. Talk about a fall from grace. Because at one point, it looked like she was going to be one of the front runners for the nomination. And she had just totally fell off a cliff. It all started when Tulsi Gabbard basically destroyed her in that one debate. I believe it was the second debate when Gabbard went after her record as a prosecutor, which it was a fair attack because Kamala Harris' record as Attorney General in California was abysmal. It just is. So she been losing support for months. A lot of her supporters been going to Elizabeth Warren, and she really needed to do something during this debate. What did she do? What was her standout moment? Well, she have two, and neither one of them is good. The first standout moment is when she was talking about the mandatory gun buyback program. And she agreed with Bayo that we need to, it have to be mandatory. It can't be voluntary. So we going to have assault weapons banned. People going to have to give them up. And like I said, I'm not necessarily against that. Just how you going to do that? It's going to be difficult. And Kamala Harris made the point in saying that, okay, communities of color, they love to say that, but communities of color is impacted most by all these guns out in the street. And people took that point. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad point, but again, you didn't say specifically how you was going to do that. And then Castro came in and basically destroyed her point. Castro said, okay, the one thing I'll be worried about with a mandatory gun buyback is it giving law enforcement and the police another tool to target certain communities. And he specifically mentioned Atiana Jefferson. Only candidate mentioned her throughout the whole debate. So I thought that was a great moment for Castro, but a terrible moment for Kamala Harris. Yes, and that's what I would be worried about too. Would a mandatory gun buyback program target specific communities? And would they let the rural communities skate by with some of their weapons? That would be something that I would definitely be concerned about. But yeah, that gun control need to be a bigger debate. Maybe a whole debate just about gun control, because so many different questions. I think we can all agree that background checks is necessary, and about maybe a banning sales of assault weapons going forward. I wouldn't be against that at all. But the mandatory gun buyback, it's just like, okay, how you going to do that without causing a bunch of violence? You know what I'm saying? So I need specifics on that. But I'm still open to it, but I just need a concrete plan to see how you going to do that. If it doesn't make sense, we can't do it. Right. So number 9, Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is always interesting. You know, she's always interesting. And we're going to talk about her a little bit later, too, with the whole Clinton thing she got into. But wasn't really a good debate for her. She, in my opinion, she had a good debate with Mayor Pete about Syria. I know I might be in the minority of thinking this, because most people would say that Mayor Pete won that exchange, but I think Tulsi did. Like, are we going to have continuous war in the Middle East? You know, what is the plan in Syria? First of all, you know, we there illegally anyway. Like, there was never no congressional consent to go to Syria. And so what is the plan? Now, I definitely disagree with Trump in the way he pulled out of Syria, especially you made a deal with the Kurds. They helped defeat ISIS, and you just abandoned them. Like, that's what Trump do. He never honors any type of deal. That's Trump 101. So nobody should ever trust Trump with anything. So I disagree with the way Trump withdrew from Syria, or he didn't even withdraw from Syria. He just withdrew from northern Syria, but we still have troops there, which still don't make no sense. If you go and do a withdrawal, you should just withdraw all troops. But you withdrew the troops in a certain area, specifically so Turkey could do what they just did. Terrible. He's a terrible commander in chief, and the sooner he get out the office, be the better. But so I actually think Tulsi Gabbard won that exchange. However, she tried to attack Elizabeth Warren a couple times, and both times it failed. She asked Elizabeth Warren, like, Senator Warren, would you join me with ending regime change war in Syria? And it was funny because Elizabeth Warren seemed like she was just surprised to get the question. She was just like, yeah. I support getting all troops out of the Middle East. And like with Tulsi Gabbard did, just fell flat. She tried to ask Elizabeth Warren another question, but the moderators cut her off. They was going to a commercial. Now, I understand what she was trying to do because it worked with what she did with Kamala Harris. And foreign policy is Elizabeth Warren's weakest point. It is. It just is. She's not great when it comes to foreign policy. She's not terrible, but she's not good either. She got a lot of weak points when it comes to foreign policy. So she was going to try to attack her weakness, and Tulsi Gabbard, foreign policy should be her strength. But the way she attacked her was sloppy and didn't make sense. You asking her questions that she could easily answer. If you wanted to pinpoint her, you could be like, okay, why did you vote for Trump military budget? But she can't do that because she voted for Trump military budget as well. But the thing that Tulsi Gabbard could have did is she could have picked out a specific policy issue that she disagreed with Elizabeth Warren with and then attacked her on that. But the way she did it, just asking her these questions, it just fell flat. She got no buzz out of it. It just wasn't what she needed. And also, she needed a better performance with that whole threat to boycott the debate, which was just attention seeking. We all knew she wasn't going to boycott. So that was another fail. So she didn't really have a great night. Number 8, Cory Booker. Cory Booker didn't do anything bad during the debate, but he just didn't do anything good either. He's too long-winded. He doesn't get to the point. There's really nothing too much to talk about with his performance. He kept trying to be the person to just be like, oh, gee, guys, can't we all get along? Let's not fight. Let's be careful about how we talk about each other. But, that's total bullshit because he was attacking Joe Biden last debate, which he should have. So that was disingenuous. He didn't do anything to stand out. And yeah, Cory Booker is doing worse in this campaign than I thought he would be doing. One of his main mistakes is this. He should have did with what Andrew Yang been doing. Andrew Yang hit people with UBI all the time. One of the things that Cory Booker, it wasn't his idea. This idea of baby bonds been around for a long time. And studies have shown, and people think that this might be one of the best things to erase the wealth gap, right? Booker should be hammering that every debate, but he doesn't even talk about that. This idea that he brought to this primary debate, but he doesn't even talk about it. He should learn from Andrew Yang. And I think if he would have talked about baby bonds, every interview, like Yang talk about UBI, he would be further along. He would be doing better in this campaign because he will have something that defines him. Like right now in this campaign, he have nothing that defines him. Maybe criminal justice a little bit because he does bring out that, he got criminal justice reform passed through the Senate, which he deserved credit for, even though it's a really watered down bill. It's just the first step. We need to do a lot more, but he does deserve credit for that. But, he doesn't really highlight his strong points. He wouldn't be my candidate anyway because there's several things that I dislike about him. But, the baby bond idea is good. Highlighting his role with criminal justice reform would be good, but he just doesn't do that enough. That's my opinion. So 8 was Cory Booker. 7 is somebody I really dislike. Again, Mayor Pete Buttigieg is probably my least favorite candidate. He is so disingenuous. He's a shitty mayor. He have no business being where he's at right now. No business. And this is a failure of the media. This is a failure of the media. And again, like I said earlier in the show, you asked Elizabeth Warren about how she going to pay for Medicare for all every damn debate. But you let this piece of shit mayor slide by with all the scandals in his police department. I want to know, why did you fire your black police chief when he brought up discrimination in the police department in South Bend? What's going on with the unarmed killings of black people in your city? You know, this is why he's at 0% with black voters in South Carolina. Terrible. And you got people on CNN after debate talking about, oh, he did so well. No, he didn't. He did okay. He got a lot of speaking time. He could speak good. He's very articulate with the way he speaks because he's highly educated. He's a smart guy. Would not take that away from him. But I don't think he really did what he needed to do in this debate to really gain traction. Let me rephrase that. Overall, he didn't. The reason why I got him at 7 is because he did get a lot of airtime, which he needed. And in Iowa, the first day, I think his only shots to win Iowa. I don't think he's going to catch on anywhere else. But I think he's currently doing okay in Iowa. He's currently polling 4th in the state. Maybe that plays well in Iowa. Maybe. So that's why I got him at 7. But overall, to chase the dynamics of the race, no. Because once he gets to more diverse states, it's a wrap for him. He's not going to be able to answer for what he did at South Bend when it comes to his police department. Just highly corrupt. Yeah, we going to get to Pete Buttigieg in another time. But he's my least favorite mayor. For those of you listening, make sure if you like Pete Buttigieg, which I can't imagine anybody listening to my show really does, make sure you look up his record in South Bend when it comes to the police department. Him firing his police chief. Him ignoring racial discrimination within the police department. Yeah. But anyway. But I try to be as fair as possible. That's why I don't got him as at 12. And he is by far my least favorite candidate. That's why I got him at 7, though. But he still did some of the stuff he needed to do. I try to keep it fair. All right, 6 is Amy Klobuchar. I really dislike her politics, but she was able to get a lot of speaking time, and she was able to contrast herself with Elizabeth Warren. So that's why I got her at 6. I disagree with basically all her points. I disagree with about everything she said, but for those people that's not truly into policy or people that's a little bit more moderate, I could see them liking her in this debate. However, one of the reasons she's not higher is I don't think she did anything to change her position. I really don't. Because most moderate voters, I think, still would be going to Biden at this point. So I don't think she truly did what she needed to do either to up her status in this campaign. So, yeah, I got Klobuchar at 6. 5, I got Biden. This was Biden's best debate by far. Early on in this debate, I thought he looked pretty good. Again, I disagreed with most of his points. But just as far as presentation is because he's a front runner. A lot of it is presentation and looking like you're competent. And he was good with this debate until the end. Now, he messed up at the end, and the mainstream media is trying to cover up for it. I thought his exchange with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren went really poorly for him. When he said that he was the only one to get stuff passed through, to get significant policy passed, and Elizabeth Warren brought up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Biden had a decent response, like, okay, I helped get votes for that, but it wasn't your idea. It was Elizabeth Warren's idea. And you trying to take credit for an idea that she came up with. Now, granted, I don't doubt that you helped to get votes for that. That's cool. That's cool. But it was her idea. You wouldn't have had nothing to get votes for if it wasn't for her. And I thought it was a bad moment when he told her, "Oh, yeah, you did good. Yeah, you did good at your job." Now, if a candidate that they didn't like said that, that would have been on the news 24/7. But because they like Joe Biden, they covered up for him. But a lot of people that saw the debate, that I talked to, a lot of women I saw, found that sexist, which I'm hesitant to bring up sexism a lot because sometimes it's overused, just like sometimes racism overused. But there are times where both racism and sexism apply, especially racism. But like, yeah, there are times where sexism apply, and this was one of those times. Well, at least it came off like that to a lot of people. I thought that was a bad moment. Even worse moment is when Bernie Sanders called him out for all the bad things he passed. That was a great moment for Bernie. Great moment for Bernie. He talked about how, yeah, Biden, you got stuff passed. You got the Iraq War passed. You got the bankruptcy bill passed. So, like, Bernie did a good job with that. So, I think Biden did good until the end, but I don't think this really going to affect his position. It's not like when Kamala Harris buried him in the first debate. So, I don't think this really going to affect him too much. Now, for Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren wasn't great during this debate, but she didn't hurt herself, in my opinion, either. One of the things that she keep getting asked is about, is middle class taxes going to go up with Medicare for all? And she needs to get better at answering this question. She do. Like, to me, this is what, the fourth debate, and she doesn't have a good answer yet. Like, that's a failure from her and her team. It's a simple question, you know. Although I don't like the framing of it, but you could easily flip it. I think her and Bernie both can answer the Medicare for all question better. Granted, Bernie answered it a lot better than Elizabeth Warren does, but one of the things that they could do is just like, okay, tell them how much the current system we have in place now is going to cost. And so they add another $32 trillion on top of that with Medicare for all, which is not accurate. You know, so it's not an additional $32 trillion. The current health system we have now, if you put everything all together, will cost more than Medicare for all. It will cost $2 trillion more. They need to bring that up every time they asked about it. That's number one. When middle class taxes, the way they need to answer it is, well, taxes for most people will actually go down. Why is that? Because premiums, deductibles are private taxes. Supreme Court ruled the reason why the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, was upheld was because the Supreme Court found it to be a private tax. So we're going to get rid of the private tax. We're going to get rid of premiums. We're going to get rid of deductibles. For most people, their overall cost will go down, which means it's really going to be a tax cut for most people. That's the way I would answer it. You know, that's the way I would answer it. You got to pound that point home. So she need to get a lot better with that. She need to get to the point a little bit faster. And I understand because, you know, I could be long-winded sometimes too. But, like, she definitely need to get to the point faster. But I think she was good, especially when it came to talking about, you know, reforms, antitrust laws. That's her bread and butter right there. She's really good with financial issues. She's really good with regulations. That's where she shines. So when they started talking about that, I thought she did really good. I thought she could have been a little bit better with the Biden exchange, a little bit faster, a little bit better with her comebacks. And when I say comebacks, I don't mean corny jokes, but just like, you know, comebacks with facts when Biden was like, yeah, was yelling at her, talking about, I got the votes for it. She should have been like, yeah, there would have been no votes for you to get if I didn't come up with the idea and push the administration to go forward with the idea. I think she need to be a little bit more aggressive. And she got to realize she's one of the front runners. Everybody's going to attack her. It seemed like she wasn't as prepared as she needed to be with that. But the reason why I still got her at 4 is because I think she did well, again, when it came to antitrust issues. The Kamala exchange with Twitter was just funny. And it didn't, I don't know if it helped war, but made Kamala Harris look bad. And I don't think her position was affected. That's why I got her at 4, because although it wasn't her best debate, I don't think the debate hurt her, and she's been consistently top 2 in the polls. So that's why I got her at 4. Number 3, I got Julian Castro. Castro, to me, he didn't get a lot of time to talk, but he's been really impressive all these debates so far, in my opinion. He just hasn't been able to get any traction, but I think the reason why I got him at 3, and I don't hold, because I don't think he's going to rise because of this debate performance, but I think he did what he needed to do too, and I'll explain that. I mentioned it earlier, his exchange with Kamala Harris about the Atiana Jefferson point with the mandatory buybacks. That was a great point. He was the only one to bring up that point. I think he's been really good on racial issues, and specifically black issues. I know people know him for the immigration stuff, but I think as far as all the candidates currently left in the field, besides Marianne Williamson, he's been pretty good on racial issues. Beto O'Rourke been pretty decent on black issues as well. So I give him credit on that. So, but I think he did what he needed to do, not to rise in the polls, but to be vice president. I think he's a serious vice presidential contender. Depending on who get the nomination, I think he could make a good vice president. So I think him continuously having good debate performances would help him with that. So that's why I got him at 3. Number 2, Andrew Yang, which is a surprise for me because I like Andrew Yang. I like I don't like his UBI. I like the idea of UBI overall. I got problems with the way his UBI plan is going to be implemented. I got a lot of problems with that, but that's for another video. But I think this is by far his best debate. He was clearer than he ever was with his message. I think that the exchange with him and Elizabeth Warren about automation, they both brought up good points. I thought it was a good moment for both of them. I thought it was a good moment for Elizabeth Warren bring up the disastrous trade deals we have. But I like Andrew Yang counterpoints about automation. And the answer is both. Both have to contribute to Americans losing jobs. So I think Yang did pretty good this debate overall, was his clearest message. Some people might find this a negative, but I don't. His plan to decriminalize all drugs in the United States and deal with it as an addiction issue. I think that's interesting because Portugal did that. It's just okay, how much resources are you going to put towards that though? Because if you do that, we're going to need a lot of clinics. What you going to do with healthcare if you do that? So that'd be interesting. But I do like the idea of decriminalization. I really do. So shout outs to Andrew Yang for his debate performance, and he is catching on now. I don't think he's going to do enough to win the nomination ever, or maybe not even enough to ever win a primary state, but he did an excellent job of getting UBI out there. It's something Cory Booker should have did with baby bonds. So Yang have been doing a good job and doing what he needs to do. Bernie Sanders is number 1 though, and I've been having criticisms of Bernie all campaign. I thought his last debate performance, while on substance was good, He looked disheveled. His voice was messed up. So overall, it did him no favors. Coming off the heart attack, people was going to look to see how he looked. He looked good. He looked good for a 77, 78-year-old man. He seemed energetic, and on substance, he was on point. He didn't get to talk as much as he should have, but when he did, he was on point. He saved Warren when it came to the Medicare for All debate, even though I think he could be better on that particular subject as well. At least on this debate. I'd seen him answer it better in the past. But I thought he was pretty decent and did a good job of fighting back with that. I mentioned his exchange with Biden, which was really good. I thought he just had an excellent debate overall. Even had a little bit of jokes on there with Biden was talking to him, talking about, are you calling me Putin? Made everybody laugh. And, that was good too. He showed a little bit of personality. He just had a great debate overall. And then on top of that, right after the debate, comes out that AOC is endorsing him, and Representative Omar is endorsing him. So like most of the squad is going to be endorsing him. Now it came out that Rashida Tlaib was going to endorse him, but then that kind of got walked back. So I don't know what the status of that is, but was great to see. And the whole squad thing is interesting because I think Ayanna Pressley is going to end up endorsing Elizabeth Warren, considering that they both from Massachusetts. And it seemed like the squad don't have nothing against Elizabeth Warren. So it's going to be interesting to see how that play out in the coming weeks. If Presley will end up endorsing Warren. I know some in the progressive community is going to have a fit. And they shouldn't, because I think Elizabeth Warren is starting to be made out to be like a boogeyman or something. They trying to make her out to be worse than she is. And yeah, she have her flaws, but Elizabeth Warren's a lot better than a lot of people in the progressive community is giving her credit for. They try to make her like she's Hillary Clinton, and she's not. Now, what to watch for in the upcoming weeks? Now you have the Turkey-Kurd situation. Currently is a ceasefire. The Kurds is going to move out of the area, and the whole thing is just a disaster. Again, Trump being Trump, not knowing what the hell he's doing at all. Just a bad situation. Just civilians getting killed. I'm glad it's a ceasefire now, but who knows what's going to happen. It's going to be a resurgence with ISIS now because of this, because the Kurds was actually guarding ISIS prisoners. Turkey's supposed to take over that responsibility. I doubt if that happens. So who knows? Just more madness in the Middle East. And again, I don't mind withdrawing from the Middle East, but you have to do it in the right way. You have to have a plan to do so. And Trump have no plans, and he's not even withdrawing for Syria. And that's the problem. You still have troops in Syria. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you just withdrawing from northern Syria and making a mess just makes no sense. Should have tried to get the UN involved, get UN peacekeepers there. But again, Trump is Trump. This is what to be expected with him. So it's going to be interesting to see in the upcoming days what happened in weeks, months, maybe even years, what happened with the situation, because I don't know. The Kurds currently is allying with Assad, which, a lot of people's not happy with either, but like, what can they do? So this is an ongoing, complicated situation, as the Middle East always is. Okay, impeachment. Now, I don't think Trump going to end up being impeached, because I just don't see how you get 67 votes in the Senate, even if Trump is caught red-handed, which he basically have been. He clearly have violated the Emoluments Clause, clearly, several times. The Republicans have no problem with it. Mick Mulvaney, his chief of staff, came out in a minute. There was a quick pro quo when it came to Ukraine. He just straight up admitted it. Now, the Republicans are trying to cover for that, not surprisingly. So we'll see what happens with impeachment. I'm not holding my breath with it. I think he should be impeached. I think he should be removed from office, but I'm just not confident that it's going to happen, especially with how timid Nancy Pelosi be. But beyond just the Ukraine situation, I mean, Trump was literally, He literally had a deal to host a G7 at his hotel. That's a clear violation, of the Emoluments Clause. That's a clear violation of it. But again, even the, they just not going to remove him for office. Now, the Republicans at least pushed back a little bit with that, and now Trump say that it's not going to be held at his hotel now. But we'll see how that goes. Trump say stuff and end up going back to it and doing it anyway. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's enough right there, in my opinion, for him to be impeached. How many times is he going to violate the Emoluments Clause with no repercussions? How many times he going to do obstruction of justice with nothing happening? I mean, it's frustrating, but that's why we just going to have to concentrate on 2020 and getting him out of office and getting a lot of these Republican senators out of office and getting these weak Democrats out of office as well. Now, let's talk about, and I hate to talk about this Tulsi Gabbard, Hillary Clinton situation. Hillary Clinton need to stop giving interviews because every time she talks, it go back to 2016, and that's not the conversation we need to have right now. It's really not. It's really not. She always bring it back to what happened in 2016, and I wish she would just go away. She came out, called Tulsi Gabbard a Russian agent, and they recruited her to run third party, called Jill Stein a Russian asset. No evidence for that. She just came out, baseless accusation. Now, Tulsi Gabbard is a mixed bag. She really is. She does several things I dislike. Throughout this campaign, she have made the conscious decision to move to the right. After Clinton accused her of this, she went on Tucker Carlson's show, which I don't like at all either. If you're going to go on Tucker's show, you at least need to be challenging his viewpoints. Don't go on his show just to be interviewed. Tucker is a white supremacist, straight up. Or at least if he's not a white supremacist, he a white supremacist sympathizer, which is just as bad, which make you a white supremacist. You know what I'm saying? So, not feeling that at all. But I doubt she's a Russian agent. If you're going to accuse somebody of doing something like that, you need concrete proof. You need concrete proof. Like, what Hillary Clinton did was basically like some random person on Twitter just throwing out accusations. She brought no evidence that Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian agent. No evidence at all. But this was good for Tulsi. Just get her name in the news. I even seen CNN defending her, which I never thought I'd see because Tulsi is a unique position where establishment Democrats hate her and a lot of progressives hate her too for different reasons. So she's a unique position when it comes to that. And I'm going to do a whole other video on my YouTube channel about Tulsi. But this was actually, I think, good for her to get her name out there. I think she's going to be able to fundraise over this. It might even get her a little bit of momentum. Not to win the nomination, but maybe a little bit momentum. To go up in the polls just a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. So overall, Clinton did Tulsi a favor. Now, I want to talk about police issues. And I'm going to do a separate video on this too about police reform, some of the stuff we could do. But just two instances I want to mention. Thankfully, the Atiana Jefferson incident is an update. The cop that murdered her, Aaron Dean, was arrested. Good. And the police department in Fort Worth is not defending him, which is good. So hopefully justice will be served in this particular case. But there's an overall problem with the police department in Fort Worth and around the country. I mean, just look at Elijah McClain. His family saw the body cam video of him getting murdered in Aurora, Colorado. It needs to be released to the public. According to his family, you could hear him saying that he couldn't breathe, he was throwing up, and the cops just showed no sympathy. That's unacceptable. We need to see what happened with that. But we have a ton of incidents like this. It's not just one area. It's not just Texas, not just Colorado. It's not just, Baltimore, Chicago, New York. It's all over the country. And that's why we need national police reform. But there's things we could do locally, statewide, and federally. And I just want to break that down a little bit. One of the things we need to do is start elected progressive DAs on a local level. Now, Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, progressive DA, progressive prosecutor, and he's so progressive, and he's been following through on his campaign promises, which a lot of times politicians don't do, that the state would try and take power away from him. And that's why you have to support Larry. We need to support him, even if you're not in the Philly area, because his model should be the model that we do with elected progressive DAs. And that's one of the first things we could do with police reform, because one of the things that he did is stop and frisk. That happened in New York too. I got a lot of problems with Mayor de Blasio, but he ended stop and frisk, and that should be a thing right there, just to end stop and frisk on a local level. But also that should be on a state and federal level too, because I would argue that violates the Fourth Amendment. Stop and frisk. So I think the federal government can be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to some of these issues as well. And then civil asset foreclosure abuse, because that happens a lot. Where your assets get frozen and there's no proof that you clearly did a crime. That's been happening. Larry Krasner been working on that issue in Philadelphia. Shouts out to him. Bringing back community policing. And one of the things I think is important too is the police that actually live in the community. Where I live at right now in Buffalo, right? To be a Buffalo police officer, you actually have to live in the city of Buffalo, which is a small change, but I think that's important too, where they have more, where the people that's what the police force have more connection with the community. I think that's very important. I think that should be brought about in the local level, because I know not all areas is like that. You have cops living way out in the suburbs or nowhere near the communities they patrol. I think that's a problem. I think that's a local issue that could easily be corrected. On the state level, I know California passed AB 392, which is basically some type of police reform. And the main thing with that in the state level in California, what it did, it just slightly changed the language of deadly force only when necessary, and it changed it when it's reasonable. So that is, I don't know how that really going to change. I don't know how that really going to change, between reasonable and necessary. I don't know. I guess it gives prosecutors more power to bring about charges, but again, what prosecutors are going to do it. And even experts are saying it's really not going to change too much of it. I do like it. It is a start, but only when necessary as compared to only when reasonable. I actually had that backwards the first time. It's actually changed it from when reasonable to only when necessary. But what do necessary mean? And the thing about this bill that would have made it better is they actually had language with it to describe when it was necessary, which basically means they had the use of force component in there. Now, because of the pushback, that language was taken out of the bill. So necessary is basically left up to interpretation, which really doesn't do too much. That defining what necessary was really necessary to make this law effective. But that's not what happened, so it is what it is. But on a state level, I think we can use this model of actually defining when it's necessary deadly force. The law in California also prohibits police from firing on fleeing suspects who don't pose an immediate danger. But that was already in this code. They just updated it. It was already in a California state law, but they made it more clear, which is positive. But again, I don't know how much of a difference that wording is going to make. I think, but at least they did this, and at least that is an example of what other states could do going forward, and what us as voters can ask people that's running for office if they support. So that's why this particular law in California was important. Now in federal, I mentioned the federal government can be much more aggressive with the Fourth Amendment and civil rights violations when it comes to stuff like stop and frisk. There need to be a universal use of force. Now, it could be challenged by states. It could be challenged by local districts. But so what? Take it to court. Use the supremacy clause. It might not work, but hell, do something. Try. Universal body cams every police department need to have body cams. Mandatory. Also on the federal level, I think we should treat this issue like the Voting Rights Act. What do I mean by that? When the Voting Rights Act came about, there were certain districts, certain states that got more attention than others because they was known for violations. We need to treat police departments the same way, because some police departments is known to be violating certain communities' rights, like Baltimore. It was a federal, under the Obama administration, there was a federal investigation. Baltimore was violating black people rights for a long time. Let's just put it like that. So we need to work on some type of legislation to treat the police reform kind of like the Voting Rights Act. And we definitely need momentum behind that. That's my show for today. I'm going to be making a larger videos on each of these subjects, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Say What I Mean, on YouTube. Facebook group, Always a Black Facebook group. We getting more active in that. Follow me on Twitter, Say What I Mean podcast, or Say What I Mean cast on Twitter. Make sure you follow me there. And thanks for staying tuned. Thanks for listening. Peace.